AOC just voted against a bill written by Marjorie Taylor Greene that would cut $500 million from Israeli defense funding, despite Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib voting for it. In that moment, AOC stood to the right of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that's not a joke. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has always read left. Young, Latina, former bartender with progressive branding. But the truth is, when it comes to imperialism, the greatest evil on this earth, she's aligned with the system. Politics isn't about vibes. Or at least it shouldn't be. Because once you start actually looking at the votes, the entire left-right framework in the United States completely disintegrates.
She's looking at herself on television right now. How are you feeling? Can you put it into words?
Nope.
Georgia on my mind. I'm Michael Smerconish in Philadelphia. By now, most everyone in America knows the name Marjorie Taylor Greene, the QAnon-supporting member of Congress.
Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez now continuing her far-left crusade against anything, everything President Trump, but there's one itsy-bitsy problem. Reality just keeps getting in the way.
Passions are running high because a socialist rising star knocked off Pelosi's protege and is sucking up all the oxygen in the Democratic Party. If Democrats want to bring socialism to America, it makes me wonder, do they want to destroy America? So when you hear people talk about socialism, just ask them, where has socialism ever worked?
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez appearing to be consoled by fellow Democrats Thursday after the chamber overwhelmingly passed funding for Israel's Iron Dome.
But ironically, the squad member didn't even vote no.
We are back with our breaking news coverage, and you're looking at video from earlier today of Israeli tanks and troops gathering in southern Israel, more than 300,000.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there.
And on this solemn day, I will restate my pledge to always ensure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself.
Thank you, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, for your vision.
Israel is a nuclear-armed nation. Their economy is strong. They're doing a great job for their people. However, the United States, the American citizens, are $37 trillion in debt. Yet we're continuing to send hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid constantly to foreign countries. This has to end at some point.
You refuse to call it a genocide in front of everyone.
I need you to understand.
It's not okay that there's a genocide happening. You're not actively against it.
You're lying, and you're going to cut this and you're going to clip this so that it's completely out of context. I already said that it was, and y'all are just going to pretend that it wasn't over and over again. It's fucked up, man. You're not helping these people, and you're not helping them.
You refuse to.
You're not helping them.
Time also put together a piece only 3 years ago, and it's quite an extensive video. It gives full information about the Nazis in Ukraine and their recruitment efforts that go all around the world. It's amazing to me that just in a few years' time, it's now considered misinformation to talk about the Nazis in Ukraine.
Congresswoman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. You ran as an outsider, yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine. You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China. Why are you playing with the lives of American citizens?
Our problems here at home for Americans and the American taxpayer that are paying for all of this have gotten too large.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez started as a nobody, a bartender in the Bronx with zero political experience. In 2018, she ran a successful campaign against a longtime Democratic incumbent, subsequently joining the squad as a self-proclaimed Democratic socialist, and was immediately embraced by liberal media.
Welcome back. The political world still reeling here. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joining us here. You've been in the building earlier today. I imagine you've been elsewhere. And welcome to politics, by the way, on this scale where, you win and everybody talks about it and then something else happens and that becomes the earthquake.
That's right.
History was made this November, and now a record number of women will serve the U.S. Congress come January. One of those women, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, perhaps you've heard of her. She'll be representing New York's 14th Congressional District. At 29 years old, she will become the youngest serving Congresswoman ever. Joining me now is New York's own Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Democratic Congresswoman-elect. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, but one of the things that has been fascinating is you've been doing these like Instagram montages of being sort of behind the curtain. Like, this is what it's like when you come just elected. Like, this is what orientation is about. I want to show people a little bit and then get your sort of thinking on what you're trying to do there. Take a listen.
Her rise to fame was quick, a little too quick. AOC was often a point of focus for conservative media, but because she called to tax the rich, pass economic reform, and bash Trump and his billionaire friends whenever possible, she became a brand, an image of progressive resistance against Donald Trump.
You know, I heard that someone started flying a plane with a banner that said, "This is Trump country." It sure don't look like it today. I don't think this is Trump country. I think this is our country.
And yet, as time went on, that image started to crack. People started to realize how quickly she assimilated to politics as usual, Congress culture. Her voting record in the House began to make clear her faulty judgment, lack of principles, her absolute ability to be captured by NGOs, think tanks, and the donor class activist machine. Oh, and PACs.
Welcome to Washington, D.C. Every year, I look forward to coming here, a conference where policy meets passion.
We'll come from different places, but there is a bond that unites us, the bond between Israel and America.
You are the educators and informers about Israel's complexity and commitment to democracy.
Your advocacy gives voice to the love for Israel that exists all across America.
Over the past couple years, popular dissent towards the state of Israel has been on the rise in the United States, across the entire political and cultural spectrum.
I'm a Trump supporter, and I don't know what's going on, but he needs to stop this. He needs to see. You got to stop looking away. You got to look at what's going on in the Middle East. My message is to all Americans that we can't watch people killing babies, women, children, civilians, and just let it go. We have to get up and speak and say, not in our name, not in anyone's name. Plenty of Jewish people have said, not in our name. It isn't anti-Semitic to say you don't want to kill babies.
This popular rise in anti-Israel sentiment has led to the parallel rise of one particular Twitter account, Track AIPAC. This Twitter account has an extremely simple way of operating and does a pretty good job exposing politicians for taking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from AIPAC to glaze and vote in favor of Israel by any means necessary. However, this Twitter account often ends up putting on a pedestal any and all politicians that don't take money from AIPAC. These posts about Bernie Sanders and AOC would bring you to believe that they have been principled in regards to the G side in Palestine and are free of corruption, right? Well, Bernie has taken money from and been endorsed by J Street, a pro-Israel lobbying group that brands itself as progressive.
Let me begin by thanking J Street for inviting me to be with you here today. It is an honor and a pleasure to be standing with an organization that has shown incredible courage, taking on some very difficult opposition, but understanding that the future of Israel and the Middle East and the future of this world requires us to fight for sane, progressive foreign policy ideas.
AOC, while not funded by any explicitly Zionist PACs, is still operating under the broader umbrella of Democratic Party money and donor discipline. That pressure really showed face in 2021, when she voted to continue the funding of the Iron Dome, a vote she clearly didn't want to cast but did anyway.
Meanwhile, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gets emotional as the House passes $1 billion in funding to Israel's Iron Dome. Take a look.
There's a handful in the House that Ms. Lawson will vote nay on House Resolution 483 amendments. A handful in the House that Ms. Lawson will vote.
But ironically, the squad member didn't even vote no.
changing your vote to present.
She was also handpicked by Justice Democrats, a group that carefully fence-sits on the Palestinian genocide, offering just enough criticism of Israel to appear principled while staying cozy with State Department narratives. AOC's connection to the maintenance of the apartheid and genocidal state of Israel really showed face in a recent congressional vote. On July 18th, AOC voted nay in regards to the Department of Defense Appropriations Act. The bill, often referred to as a messaging bill due to its extreme unlikelihood of being passed, was written by Marjorie Taylor Greene and would have cut funding towards Israel's Iron Dome by $500 million.
Marjorie Taylor Greene was able to attract one Republican, Thomas Massey, coincidentally is somebody that Donald Trump is desperate to remove from Congress, and four Democrats, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Al Green, and Summer Lee. So that's a total of 6 votes. 422 were against. 422 to 6. One of the people who was not on the list of 6 voting against sending $500 million for Israel's military, she was in fact a no vote, one of the 422 no votes, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, queen of the left, queen of the working class. She voted to have American workers send $500 million to bolster Israel's military.
Now let me remind you, Iran was able to successfully penetrate Israel's Iron Dome and managed to inflict damage so powerful it caused the Israeli state to panic like a bunch of ants under an overturned stone.
Iran has tonight launched retaliatory strikes on Israel. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it attacked dozens of targets, including military centers and air bases. Smoke has been seen rising over the skyscrapers of Tel Aviv after an aerial attack on the Israeli city. Explosions have also been heard in Jerusalem. Tonight's bombardment is in retaliation for Israel's strikes on Iran last night, which targeted military and nuclear sites.
Without the Iron Dome, Israel is nothing. Now you might think AOC voted nay in order to avoid any and all connections to Marjorie Taylor Greene, an incredibly unpopular politician amongst the American left. But let's be clear, progressive Democrats like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib voted yes, and they're now being praised by the American left.
She's once again throwing under the bus and smearing the very good faith pro-Palestinian representatives who did vote for this amendment. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Representative Al Green, and
Summer Lee and Thomas
Summer
Massey.
Lee, yeah. She's basically saying that they are so stupid that they fell for the neo-Nazi, pretending that that person is operating in good faith. When in reality, no, I'm sure that Ilhan Omar, I'm sure that, Al Green, I'm sure there are no fans of Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not like, Representative Rashida Tlaib is just sitting around waiting for the opportunity to collaborate with her bestie MTG. Obviously not. But that's not really the way that this works, right? Unfortunately, the nature of being a representative or a senator is that, yeah, sometimes you do have to sign on to a bill or co-sponsor a bill that's, written by someone you totally disagree with. That's the nature of it. Ro Khanna's done it with Rand Paul. Rand Paul's probably said just as many objectionable things as Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know what I'm saying? And I never hold that against Ro Khanna.
I'm afraid this whole situation can bring me only to one conclusion. AOC, at least in this moment, is to the right of Marjorie Taylor Greene on the political spectrum. I mean, to the layman, this statement makes absolutely no sense, right? I will always remember watching this video on Hassan Piker's Twitch stream all those years ago. And say what you will about the total legitimacy of this video, I'm sure there's critique to be had, but they got one overarching idea correct. The political divide, left and right, is not about optics, who's nice and who's mean, who's woke and who's reactionary. Historically, the political divide has always come down to the economic system. Socialism on the left, capitalism on the right. Now there are different extents to which these two systems materialize. Vladimir Lenin refers to imperialism as the final stage of capitalism. Karl Marx refers to there being 3 different time variations or temporalities of communism, the lowest stage being socialism, a dictatorship of the proletariat. But at its core, the divide is socialism versus capitalism. Now, if I were to take everything I've learned about the term imperialism and everything that encompasses it, and boiled it down into some sort of sticky, viscous sludge, I would be left with the state of Israel. Supporting the funding of the quote-unquote defense of Israel, a country that has been attacked by its neighbors time and time again for good reason, is point-blank period right-wing, and very strictly negates all the other optical identifiers that people associate with progressivism and thus AOC. She is directly uplifting American imperialism. Marjorie Taylor Greene, on the other hand, wrote the damn bill, a bill that straightforwardly limits the grips of imperialism on the world. I wouldn't say this alone places Marjorie Taylor Greene on the left, but it without a doubt places her further to the left than AOC.
Israel is a nuclear-armed nation, and they're less than $400 billion in debt. They are quite a thriving and successful nation. Their economy is strong. They're doing a great job for their people. However, the United States, the American citizens, are $37 trillion in debt. Yet we're continuing to send hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid constantly to foreign countries. This has to end at some point. Our problems here at home for Americans and the American taxpayer that are paying for all of this have gotten too large. And I also want to point out that Israel bombed a Catholic church in Gaza, and that an entire population is being wiped out as they continue their aggressive war in Gaza. Now, we are heartfelt about the October 7th tragedy, that when people were killed, innocent people were killed. However, at some point, the United States needs to recognize that Israel is a strong country. They are nuclear armed, and they are capable of defeating their own enemies. It's right to stop funding this, as we give them $3.8 billion every single year anyways. Mr. Speaker, I ask for support for my amendment, and I yield the remainder of my time.
These were the two tweets that AOC put out after her incredibly controversial vote became public. Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment does nothing to cut off offensive aid to Israel nor end the flow of US munitions being used in Gaza. Of course, I voted against it. What it does do is cut off defensive Iron Dome capacities while allowing the actual bombs killing Palestinians to continue. I have long stated that I do not believe that adding to the death count of innocent victims to this war is constructive to its end. That is a simple and clear difference of opinion that has long been established. I remain focused on cutting the flow of US munitions that are being used to perpetuate the G-side in Gaza. A couple days later, she followed it up with another tweet with a much angrier tone. Google is free. If you're saying I voted for military funding, you are lying. Receipts attached. Drag me for my positions all you want, but lying about them doesn't make you part of the left. If you believe neo-Nazis are welcome and operating in good faith, you can have them. Really throwing her colleagues under the bus with this one. I mean, literal original squad members voted against her. What is she talking about? This is the exact kind of tone that liberal leftists like AOC use that causes them to be universally distrusted by both the American left and the American right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is what Vladimir Lenin refers to as a social chauvinist. Socialism in words, chauvinism in deeds. It's like the classic Malcolm X quote about the fox and the wolf, although at this moment, the wolf is being surprisingly based.
There are many whites who are trying to solve the problem, but you never see them going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox. And a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to. But the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling and you take him for a friend.
Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is still right-wing from a broad perspective, but at the same time, she is consistently to the left of the Democratic Party. Now, this isn't me trying to glaze Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm simply analyzing how much of her messaging is left populism that tends to get ignored due to her standard sprinkling of racism and bigotry. The Democratic Party, on the other hand, is what I call the woke right, and an increasingly social chauvinist party as they continue to prop up AOC and other quote-unquote socialists to lead the Democratic Party into the future, knowing damn well they won't do anything socialist when they get there. And that brings me to my final assessment of the video. People on the left have often referred to AOC as controlled opposition, not in the sense that she was created in a lab, but kind of. It's important to pay attention to censorship by party disciplinarians. And there's a reason AOC hasn't been censored, but Rashida Tlaib has. It's very likely that over time, ever since her successful congressional campaign in 2018, thanks to several NGOs and advisors tight with the Democratic Party through donations and personal amenities, she has been convinced to give her unfettered support to Israel and the maintenance of Israel as an apartheid and genocidal state. However, there is an even more likely circumstance that brought AOC to where she is today. AOC was very likely plucked from a hat by Justice Democrats. I mean, that's just a fact. She was chosen by Justice Democrats. But what's obvious to me is why she was chosen. And that's really the point I want to get across with this video.
Back in 2016, we put out a call for nominations, trying to capture the diversity of background, of experience of the American electorate, the people that aren't currently represented in office. We got over 10,000 nominations. Out of those 10,000 nominations, we found Alexandria.
Justice Democrats is a political action committee formed out of the Bernie Sanders movement of 2016, with the stated goal of electing progressives to transform the Democratic Party.
My brother told me that he had sent my nomination in the summer, but I was like, literally working out of a restroom, and I was like, there's no way.
Her profile is not what you'd think of as someone who should run for office, right?
I grew up with a really politically engaged and attuned family. We always were debating politics, talking about things, but we were never involved in the formal structures of politics.
But rather than challenge the party's capitalist and imperialist foundations, they work to rebrand it, inserting diverse, young, media-savvy candidates who say the right things, but ultimately play by the same rules. Figures like AOC are useful, not because they change the system, but because they make progressives feel like change is happening. It's a pressure release valve, a way to pacify dissent, and to keep disillusioned voters emotionally invested in a party that serves capital and empire. AOC didn't just become a disappointment to the American left. AOC becoming a disappointment was inevitable. She was picked out of a hat not for her progressive views, but with the foresight that she will be just progressive enough to return dissenters to the Democratic Party, but just controllable enough to keep her in line. She was picked not to challenge power, but to redirect frustration back into the system. So yes, in this moment, AOC is to the right of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And while usually she is aesthetically to the left, while in substance to the right of Marjorie Taylor Greene, in this moment, especially with the way she responded to criticism against her from the left, she is nearly at the point where she is both in substance and in aesthetics to the right of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was created in a lab by the deep state. And as funny as that sounds, it's more true than it is false. Thank you for watching North Star Radio. Free Palestine.